Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. It's 3 p.m. here in the UK and it's 10 a.m. Eastern. And you're all most welcome to join us here at 0 Days Live. Today is Fun Friday, and you can see slightly more casual attire, as I said on yesterday's show. And I don't know about you, but it does feel a little bit like the end of the school term. It's been our very first week on the air. And we're all dressing down and have some games to play. And speaking of games, actually, I did bring one along with me today that is one of my favorites, bit of a classic, Jenga. And in advance of today's show, actually, I did ask everyone to bring along with them their classic end of term school game in two. So we'll find out a little bit more about that in a bit. My name's Stuart Reed. I'm with Nominet, focused on cyber solutions. And given the dynamic nature of cyber and the even more dynamic situation we face ourselves in right now, we thought we'd try something a bit new. A little bit about us. You may be familiar with Nominet, being responsible for managing the .uk domain. We've been doing that for over 23 years now and have something in the order of 15 million domains under management. In addition, and building on our experience of domains and DNS, or the domain name system, we also provide cybersecurity solutions to protect both government and enterprise networks worldwide from cyber attacks, including providing service to the UK government's National Cybersecurity Centre. And at Nominet, ensuring people are able to be connected, included and secure is at the heart of what we do. And with a lot of people perhaps feeling slightly disconnected from one another right now, especially with the usual conferences, events and face-to-face meetings being paused at the moment, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to do something a little bit different and create a webcast that is open for all within or with an interest in cybersecurity. The premise of our show is really simple. It's to provide an opportunity to hear from others in the industry, get a roundup of what's going on in the news, and share some thoughts on best practice as we navigate our way through what is and continues to be a changing world. But most importantly, we want your involvement too. During today's show and of any other live shows that you join, you'll notice that there is a console in your screen with the ability to ask a question or to provide a comment at any time. So please do use it. Any questions you have today, please ask us and we'll read them out during today's webcast. And just a quick reminder, we are keeping this all very authentic. As you can see, we are running these webcasts every single weekday live between now and at least June. And because we are live, anything could and probably will happen at some stage, but we'll hope that you'll agree that if and when it does, it's just part of the charm of the show. Now, in line with the rest of the week, we're running these webcasts for about 30 minutes a day, but there are no hard and fast rules, especially not today as it is Fun Friday. And if you're not able to join us for the live episodes or indeed the whole show, you can catch us on demand. So please visit nominetcyber.com/0dayslive, which is the same page that you signed up from. So it really couldn't be easier. And actually, before we move on to today's guest, I do have some breaking news. We at 0 Days Live Virtual Towers were incredibly excited today. We got our very first superfan, Tim. Now, Tim's been following us about this week and finally plucked up the courage to leave us a message on our YouTube channel. And here's a view of that message right now. Now, it's a very nice message, amazing content. You deserve, more subscribers. Thank you very much, Tim. But it does now transpire that Tim is in fact a bot. But even so, I think it's a great example of AI in action. But please do let us know what you think. And speaking of thinking, Steve, how are you today? Excited for Fun Friday?
Absolutely, I cannot wait for Fun Friday. I can see the sun's out. I'm ready for the weekend. I hear it's going to get even more. The weather's going to get even better at the weekend, so I'm ready for it now.
Excellent, pleased to hear it. And what game have you brought along with you today?
My game is Cluedo, family classic.
Very good. Very good, approve of that. I wasn't quite sure off camera whether there was something lurking behind you as well.
You mean
maybe a pet robot?
my bot, Tim?
Yes. Okay. Interesting. Nice to meet you, Tim, virtually at least. Okay, so anyway, just remembered, I've not done a pet peeve today, so thank you for vaguely reminding me of that, Steve. Today's pet peeve for me is DIY. And being at home gives me plenty of time to spot things that need doing around the house. The list is now getting longer and I'm not very good at DIY, so it's a really bad combination. Steve, what's your pet peeve? Can't be the sun shining.
It's not the sun shining, it's the opposite actually. It's the fact that I'm quite a keen gardener, and as of yet this year, I've been unable to get into the garden to plant some seeds and get my plants growing. So I'm hoping this weekend will change all of that.
Good stuff. And to everybody listening, I want to hear your pet peeves too, as we have done for the whole of this week. So please do let us know by using your questions console on your screen, and Kerry will read them out. And speaking of Kerry, remind us, what's your pet peeve?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Stuart. So my pet peeve today is actually about this poor little ladybug that has been trapped in my conservatory for the last 3 days. And it only ever decides to make an appearance when we're filming this show. So every other time I've looked for it to try and rescue it and put it out into the garden, nada. But give it 5 minutes, it'll be buzzing around my head.
Well, it obviously wants to tune into the show, and it's very welcome to do so. So remind us, or show us rather, what your board game of choice is today as well.
So my game of choice is charades. If you haven't worked it out by now, I am a big fan of organised fun through my pub quizzes and various other activities. So you cannot beat a game of charades.
Charades.
Well, I was actually going to pick up on that point. It's a little bit like scone and scone, but that's probably one for another day as well. Okay, so let's move on to today's discussion. Yesterday, we were lucky enough to be joined by Simon Staffel as part of GovSec Thursday. As I mentioned, it's Fun Friday today, and I'm delighted to say that we'll be joined by none other than Haas F1's Gary Foote, who is their Chief Information Officer. But before we talk to him in more detail, for all of you F1 fans out there, we did recently catch up with the drivers of Haas F1 and asked them some very important questions. Here's what they said.
I'm Kevin Magnussen.
And I'm Romain Grosjean, and we are the Haas F1 team drivers.
Would you give me that one?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Just because it doesn't have kids yet. Snakes. Badly.
I'm scared of snakes, spiders, scared of them. Lots of things I'm not scared of.
Speed.
Yeah, speed.
To start. Jack and Jones.
White Jack and Jones.
Black Jack and Jones. I never wear white socks. It's old-fashioned, doesn't work anymore.
No, but these shoes are old-fashioned.
Yeah. Wow. Kangaroo. They seems to be having a good time in Australia in general, except from the fire earlier this year. But I don't know. Australia is a beautiful country. I love being there.
A lion, but only because
of course.
Relaxing all day, every day, and has a lot
Go
of
for
women
a cat then.
and food delivered every day. And I think a lion has a really good life.
Oh, shall we go and ask one?
I don't really like exercising. I think it's too much. Phones, especially, you know, it's taking over our lives. But in most ways, it's good. So just distracting.
I'm absolutely passionate by technology, but I think we need to make a conscious effort of trying to stop ourselves being on it all the time and just make sure that we keep the contact, social contact.
Mine was a Fiat Cinquecento.
The Alfa Romeo 147. There's a guy waiting on the side of the road, and to cross the road is a very busy road, and he's waiting, and there's another guy coming by and he says, "Oh, you know, there's a zebra crossing up the road." And the guy replies, "Oh, he's luckier than me then."
I didn't even get it.
There's a zebra crossing up the road. So the guy thought it was a zebra crossing.
Yeah.
The zebra crossing is the painting line.
He was luckier than me then.
He was luckier than me. It's okay, just cut it,
Moving
cut
on.
it, cut it, cut it. I liked it, but it's okay.
Well, what better way to kick off Fun Fridays than to have a look at that? It does seem that a few of our viewers did experience a couple of challenges with that video, so apologies if that was you. If you have, then please do check us out on demand. It will be all up and running there later on, but hopefully most of you are able to see that. So what better way to celebrate our very first Fun Friday, other than, of course, to introduce our very special guest today, Gary Foote. Hi, Gary. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, Stuart. Thank you for having me. Yes, I too was challenged on the video in that I had no audio, so I was trying to lip read as they went along.
Well, you're in the privileged position that you're actually in the audience when it was filmed, so you should know broadly what they said, but not to worry even if you didn't, because actually we're going to ask you some of those very similar questions in a few moments. But very first, though, pet peeves. What's yours?
Pet peeves. I think it's a bit garden related as they have been, but it's just my peeve at the moment is the rate the lawn is growing at. I.e., I mow the lawn and then it seems that a matter of hours later it needs mowing again. So I'm kind of hoping that spring will move on a little bit. We'll get some nice sun in the summer and the lawn can actually stop growing for a few moments.
Well, we are thinking that it's going to be decent weather this weekend, so only time will tell. Also, what's your board game of choice?
I don't have a board game as such with me, but I have this model car to demonstrate the complete consumption of my life with toy cars at the moment, with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old who are both very much into their cars. I literally find cars everywhere. So yeah, they are very well loved in our household.
Excellent. Well, cars, you can't argue with those. So thank you very much for bringing that in, and totally relate to having little ones running around as well. Now, we've covered a lot of ground in our first week here at 0 Days Live, Gary, as I'm sure you'll be aware from tuning in every day. We've covered cloud security, we've covered the importance of DNS for cybersecurity, the proposed legislation from the USA, and of course, one that everyone can relate to, remote working. So if I start with that, without Formula One right now, how are you keeping yourself busy?
I guess as an IT department, we're quite lucky really, because although the racing has stopped, the business is still functioning. So, you know, IT and HR and finance, those kind of departments are still building on. We don't have people on site in the office for obvious reasons, but we're still supporting everybody remotely. As a business, we're still functioning. The sport's actually on a shutdown at the moment, which for those familiar with the sport will know in August, we shut down for 2 weeks, gives everybody who goes racing a bit of a break from the sport. They can spend some time with their families, but because of the current situation, we've brought that forward. So anyone who's related to the performance or running of the car, they're all on some very well earned annual leave. And then the business support functions behind the scenes, you know, we're still working, albeit remotely. But, you know, we've given people the ability to work remotely for a while now. I've seen on LinkedIn and things that, you know, the COVID-19 is a bit of a sort of bumper for digital transformation, but actually it isn't really, certainly not for us, insofar as, you know, we've tried to enable people to work from home really since the start.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing something similar with the audience. As a variety of people that it's kind of second nature to them to be working remotely or working from home, and others where it's a bit of a new experience. So there's a real mix out there, but certainly the current situation that we find ourselves in means that everyone's really working from home now, which kind of really has helped accelerate digital transformation, whether you like it or not, I guess. Now, one of the other stories this week that caught our eye was around ransomware payments. InfoSecurity magazine reported that 58% of companies were hit by ransomware in 2019 and paid that ransomware. I find that an incredible stat, actually, and I made my thoughts on paying ransomware pretty well known yesterday. In our opinion, you absolutely should not do it. Not only is it funding criminal activity, it potentially makes you an easy or more lucrative target next time round. And if you do pay, who's to say that the criminals are actually going to be honourable enough to give you access back to the data anyway? But of course, I can appreciate for many organisations, it's a really tough call to make. What's your take on it, Gary?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar with you. I would say, you know, absolutely not. I think the biggest concern I would have of it all is yes, even if they were honourable, quote unquote, at the start, you know, you've got a target on your back there, because at that point in time, the dark web will all talk, and all of a sudden, you know, there's easy pickings. But I think, you know, to maybe defend decisions that others have made to the contrary, you never quite know what the situation is and what people are faced with, and you know, and getting business back to normal. So personally, I'd rather spend my time and my effort and my resources preventing it or protecting from it, rather than falling for it.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice. I mean, prevention in this case certainly is better than cure in many circumstances. So in terms of that preventative measure, how can you best avoid ransomware in the first place?
I think you've got to, you know, your disaster recovery and backup scenarios are incredibly important. You know, it's making sure that you've got copies of data, not necessarily mirrored, you know, delayed copies, you know, offsite, on-site, and just building up a map of tools, software, policy, and data governance to kind of, in a bit of a stacked approach to, you know, to do the best job you can, because ultimately you can only do the best with the tools that you have available. You know, one of the challenges of cybersecurity, you know, in general, is trying to be a step ahead, and that's it's a pretty hard thing to do. So you just have to do the best you can.
Okay, well, thank you for your advice there, Gary. It's a subject that's close to a lot of people's hearts right now, and it certainly resonated with our audience yesterday when the news was breaking. So I'm sure there'll be more to talk about on this as we go through other shows of ours. But remembering today is Fun Friday, so what I'd like to do, Gary, is move to the more light-hearted side of this show today. You've got the very honourable position of being our very first guest for our Fun Friday, so I appreciate you joining us. And I do have a number of questions that won't be dissimilar to the ones that were on the video just now, but beware also, I might be asking you, Steve, and you, Kerry, a couple of these as well. So do get your thinking caps on for those too. Actually, the first one that I'm going to raise is a bit of a cheat. It's around socks, and for this one we did ask you and the rest of the team earlier to send a picture to share with the audience of what your socks are today. And it hasn't escaped us, Gary, that your last name is Foote, so we are expecting greatness here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look then. Wow, there's an array of socks. Actually, in terms of the audience there, it would be quite interesting for you all to have a guess of whose socks are whose on there. Give you a few moments just to digest that, everybody that's viewing us today. Okay, well, so first pair of socks then, they're mine. So they are, as you can see, quite brightly coloured. I think they are parrots on my socks today, but I'm not entirely sure. It's quite abstract. Second pair of socks, whose are they? Will the owner of those socks step forward?
They're mine. Boring
nice,
and bad.
Nice corporate colours I see there. Goes well with the banner. So thank you very much. Third pair of socks then. Who's this?
That'll be me.
Excellent. Nothing like orange and red going together, Steve. So nice choice. Which means the last pair of socks, which are very well coordinated with the pattern on the carpet there, must be yours, Gary Foote.
Yeah, they weren't intentionally for camouflage, but yeah, they're fairly dull grey socks, unfortunately. But I'd have worn smarter jeans if I'd have known.
Well, next time, Gary, next time. So let's move on to some of those other questions, a bit more of a quick fire piece for you. So let's start with, what's your favourite isolation activity right now, Gary?
I'm an outdoorsy person, so yeah, being outside, gardening, a bit of DIY, but outdoorsy, fun DIY, not the whole painting the house, boring DIY. So, you know, building things that don't need to be built, that kind of thing.
Good. Well, we'll look for some pictures of that maybe later on as well from you then, Gary. The mind boggles. Second question, what scares you?
Scares me? That's a good question. Not a huge amount. I'm quite a glass half full kind of guy. I'm not a big fan of not being able to solve problems. That sometimes worries me a little bit. You know, whatever that problem, be it a life problem, a work problem, whatever it happens to be. And I get frustrated if I can't solve that in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I don't think anything particularly other than, you know, the more morbid aspects of life, I guess.
Well, bearing in mind we're trying to keep this one light-hearted, then Gary, we'll steer away from that bit. But I will actually ask that question to both Steve and Kerry. What scares you, Steve?
Well, I think with all of the shortages that we've been experiencing, the big thing that scares me is running out of cheese. Pretty much everyone in our house relies on cheese as part of their stable diet. We could probably do without toilet roll, definitely do without pasta, but if we run out of cheese, all hell is going to break loose.
I think that's a good choice, actually, Steve, and I can relate to that one. Kerry, what's yours?
Mine's a bit of an obvious one, actually. I'm absolutely petrified of spiders. So if I see one, I have to take deep breaths, scream a lot, and then psych myself up to kill them, I'm afraid.
I thought that you were going to say about ladybirds then, but obviously not.
No, you'd see me screaming if that was the case.
So next one then. If you're an animal, what animal would you be, Gary?
What animal would I be? I would probably be, let's think, I'd be a snow leopard. You know, I'm probably happiest up in the hills, in fresh air, minimal human contact. I think that's what they have.
Solid choice. Thanks, Gary. We're getting a real insight to your character through these lines of questions, so I'm glad we're asking them. Actually, Kerry, what's yours?
I'd be a honey badger. They have a whole world of crazy.
Okay. Yeah, again, I was waiting for the ladybird, but it's obviously not going to happen today. Steve, what's yours?
I think it'd be a meerkat. They just look like pretty fun creatures, just sticking their heads up everywhere, not a care in the world. You know, they seem like a lot of fun.
I think that's also another solid choice. There seems to be a bit of a cat theme, or at least a fur theme on here as well. Moves me on to my next question. What's your favourite exercise or sport then, Gary?
My favourite exercise, yeah, probably hiking. Yeah, I'm not a particularly sporty person, but yeah, hiking, chasing my kids when they've done something naughty is usually quite a very big form of exercise for me. Yeah.
As long as it doesn't turn into a sport, I guess, Gary.
Who knows?
What was your first car, Gary?
My first car was a Mini. I had quite a few Minis. In fact, the first car I had actually had no wheels, so it wasn't a very good choice. But I bought it from a scrap dealer in the village when I was not old enough to drive it, and it had wheels when I bought it, but when they delivered it, it didn't have any wheels because they'd sold them since. So it's
yeah,
getting used to
drivability, I guess, without wheels and tires. But yeah, Steve, what was your first car?
My first car was called a Hyundai Pony. That was the real name. It had it printed on the back. to make it look, it had fake blue leather seats that got a little bit sticky in the summer. wasn't great. And to make it look good, I put a go faster stripe with masking tape down the bonnet. So yeah, that was my first car.
We do that in F1 and it works.
Yeah, it's true. Ahead of my time, clearly.
Yeah, clearly. Well, I don't know how you follow that one, Kerry, but what was your first car?
It was a Seat Ibiza, handed down from my parents via my sister, so quite old, and got me A to B.
But no masking tape.
Sorry.
Okay then. So last question for now then, Gary. What's your favourite piece of technology?
I would say probably home Sonos system. Other speaker choices are available. No endorsement. Yeah, the Sonos system for sure. We have it in pretty much every room of the house, and we use it nearly consistently, constantly.
Excellent. And Kerry, what's your favourite piece of tech?
My favourite tech has to be my phone. I'm glued to it 24/7. The fact that it's got an amazing camera and just can do everything from your hand is incredible to think how that compares to how life was 10 years ago, really. So yeah, definitely the phone.
Yeah, actually, mine's pretty similar to that. Mine's my smartwatch. I really didn't think that I'd take to it too much, but I've got a little bit addicted to looking at the kind of the stepometer on there. I've been looking at it for the last week or so, and I'm barely getting into double digits, so it's a little bit depressing. I might just have to take it off for a while. Steve, what's yours?
Well, despite my pet peeves earlier in the week, I think it has to be video streaming. So, Netflix, Amazon, Disney, whatever it takes, they are an absolute godsend when you're in lockdown, especially with the kids.
And even Frozen 2?
And even Frozen 2, still not as good as Frozen 1, but it's still an hour and a half of time to waste.
Could be a controversial comment, but I'll let it go. So thank you very much for answering those questions for us, Gary. Appreciate that. Let's turn it over to the audience for a bit. Is there anything that's coming in from them, Kerry?
Yeah, we've got some good feedback in from the audience. So we've had some people talking about their favourite types of technology. So HomePod and mobile phone being those. We have had a pet peeve from somebody who can't get their partner to do 10,000 steps a day and need to get them motivated. But we've also had a comment about how Steve is looking a little bit like the Terminator right now.
Maybe I am.
Will you be back?
I think that's just a fuzzy webcam in an image, isn't it?
I do have a question for Gary as well in from the audience, relating back to the cybercrime conversation from earlier.
Go ahead.
Have you seen any kind of uplift in activity through the coronavirus, and how are you guys preparing for that?
We personally haven't, but I think what I'm reading is that the retail has. There's a lot of shift to online shopping, and you're seeing an awful lot of news, and a lot of due diligence needs to be put onto there. I think also the thing with Corona is it kind of defocuses people. There's a bit of panic there, isn't there? And people are going to exploit that. So although we specifically haven't seen anything, I think the hackers are going to take any tool they can to leverage, and this is definitely going to be one of them.
Anything else there, Kerry?
No, that's it from the audience.
Well, if you do have any other questions from anyone that's listening today, please do type them into the console panel now. We do still have some more time on the show. Whilst you're doing that, I'll turn back over to Kerry to give you a bit of a wash up of today's cyber news.
Yes, thank you, Stuart. So Computer Weekly reports that Magecart attacks online retailers have jumped up by 20%, similarly to what Gary's just been saying since the start of the coronavirus. As more people are forced to shop online, then there's an increased risk in e-commerce. US publication For the Record features an article on ransomware in this month's edition, and you might want to check out if you enjoyed the discussion earlier. That one's worth a look. And finally, there is a great article in the Times about the lighter moments of working from home, written by James Dean. So again, that one's worth a look. So that's the news. So back to you, Stuart. And Stuart, I don't think you've told us which animal you would be if you could be an animal.
Well, I think I'd probably keep it to the cat species. I think just a normal cat, because you're able to walk around and generally do as you please. So I think I'd probably be choosing a cat. And on that note, thank you, Kerry. That is probably more or less all we've got time for today. So if there's any more questions from the audience, please do type them in now. Interesting that, again, the points around ransomware seem to keep coming back in again. I don't think this is going to be the last time we see that. And of course, the attacks that we're seeing on online retailers, this kind of type of credit card fraud technique that essentially skims credit card numbers in the supply chain is something that seems to be gaining some prevalence as well. So also something to keep a close eye on, and online retailers will no doubt be paying close attention to that on their websites, and also their network traffic to make sure that these attacks aren't compromising their ability to operate online, especially now as we find ourselves in times where we are far more reliant perhaps on online systems. That's it for today, except to say a really special thanks to Gary. Thank you very much for joining us today as our very first special guest for Fun Friday. Hope you enjoyed our slightly more trivial questions, as well as asking you something that was more cyber related. So had a good conversation with you around that. Also, a big thanks to all of our other guests this week as well, to everyone front of house here at ZeroDaysLive and also behind the scenes. A very big thank you for making everything work seamlessly this week. And of course, to all of you that have joined us both live and also on demand as well, that we're now available. And also, a big thank you to our new bot friend Tim as well. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you next week for another wave of live episodes of 0 Days Live. Until then, have a good weekend. Goodbye.